Gotham did not notice when the contract was signed. Cities like this never feel the pen. They feel the consequence. The rain came first, a thin, metallic drizzle that clung to skin and tasted faintly of rust. It slicked the gargoyles and ran down the cracked spines of abandoned churches. It filled potholes with trembling reflections of a skyline that had long ago stopped pretending to be proud. At 2017 a.m., the lights along Kane Street flickered in nervous sequence. We thought it was the grid again. We were wrong. I was awake because my son wouldn't sleep. Sirens had passed twice already that night, and he had begun to measure darkness in decibels. Every distant wail meant someone else's father wouldn't come home. He pressed his ear to my chest like it was a bunker. Then the air changed. It is difficult to explain the sensation of precision entering a neighborhood. Not chaos, not panic. Precision. A man in a charcoal overcoat stepped out of a sedan that did not idle loudly. He checked his watch. He did not look up at the skyline. He looked at the windows. He knew someone was watching. Across the street, another man folded in half as if kneeling to pray. A dark bloom spread across his shirt. No thunder followed. No echo. Just the soft punctuation of something final. The charcoal man did not run. He opened his umbrella. From above, higher than fear, higher than prayer, a shape separated from shadow. He did not descend like an angel. He dropped like a verdict. The impact cracked pavement. The umbrella flipped inside out. 3 more men emerged from parked cars, movements clean and almost polite. Their weapons were not the kind you see in gang footage. They were expensive, compact, purpose-built. They fired in measured pairs. The bat moved through them without flourish. Armor drank the rain. The Kate flared, stiffening as if it remembered bone. A forearm snapped a wrist. A knee drove through cartilage. One man choked on his own breath and never found it again. My son started crying. I pulled him away from the window, but I kept looking. Because Gotham teaches you that if you don't look, you won't understand what kills you. The man with the umbrella fell last. Not because he was slow, but because he waited. He raised a phone. "Send him," he said. The bat paused. It was not hesitation, it was recognition. Across the avenue, on a rooftop that had not held anything but pigeons for years, another silhouette resolved from rain. He did not wear a symbol. He did not announce himself. He carried a pistol like a surgeon carries a scalpel. He fired once. The round struck the bat's shoulder seam. Not center mass. Not theatrics. A seam. The bat staggered. Second shot knee joint. Third missed by inches as the cape hardened mid-swing, slicing air where the shooter had been. John Wick did not flinch. He adjusted. He descended the fire escape without urgency, boots ringing softly on metal. They met between vehicles, close enough to smell each other's blood. The bat struck first, gauntlets smashing Wick's weapon aside. Wick let it fall. A second appeared in his hand as if grown there. 2 shots into the ribs. Armor absorbed most of it. Most. The bat's breath left him in a sound that did not belong to a man. They collided against a storefront. Glass exploded outward, showering mannequins and glittering wounds. Wick drove a blade upward, slipping it between plates near the clavicle. The bat roared, not in pain, but in fury at miscalculation. He slammed Wick against a windshield. Steel crumpled. The blade remained lodged. Rain turned red. A stray round pierced the fuel tank of a nearby SUV. Flame bloomed low and hungry. The building above them groaned. I felt it through the floorboards before I heard it, the shift of weight surrendering to gravity. Concrete does not scream. It resigns. The corner of Kane and Wycliffe began to fold, not dramatically, gradually. Like a spine giving up, the bat disengaged first not to flee, but to reposition. Wick rolled beneath falling debris, coat tearing but skin untouched. He fired upward through dust, rounds seeking gaps in armor. The bat grappled to a lamppost and swung clear. Wick stepped backward just as masonry devoured the sidewalk where he had stood. The laundromat owner never moved fast enough. Neither did the couple from 3B who had come outside to see what the noise was. By the time sirens arrived, 14 people were trapped beneath what used to be their homes. The bat crouched atop a twisted beam, knife still in his armor. Wick stood below, one arm hanging slightly lower than the other. They stared at each other across smoke and flame. Wick spoke first. Nothing personal. The bat said nothing. He removed the blade himself, and then both men vanished into opposite darknesses, leaving the street to burn. By morning, the city called it structural failure exacerbated by criminal crossfire. By afternoon, a name circulated through precinct halls and criminal dens alike: the Continental. By nightfall, another word followed it like a shadow: contract. The price attached to the bat's head was not public, but we felt its gravity. Men who once hid when the signal lit began checking rooftops instead. Informants disappeared. Gold coins appeared over closed eyelids. Gotham understood something new had entered its bloodstream. Not a clown, not a toxin. Procedure. And procedure does not rage, it completes. That night, after the fire crews left and the rain washed ash into the gutters, I tucked my son into bed and listened to helicopters circle the skyline. He asked me if the bat would save us. I did not answer, because I had seen the way the building fell. And I knew something he did not. Sometimes the monster is not the one who wants you dead. Sometimes it is the one who refuses to stop fighting in your living room. Above the city, the bat signal ignited, not as hope, as bait, and somewhere in a hotel that officially does not exist, a man in a tailored suit closed a ledger and said softly, "Let it escalate." The contract had begun to breathe. History remembers an alley. It remembers pearls scattering across wet pavement. It remembers a gunshot. It remembers a boy kneeling between two bodies. History lies by omission. The alley was not the beginning. The beginning was a boardroom. Thomas Wayne stood before men who called their interests stability. Screens behind him displayed urban unrest models, riot projections, containment simulations, behavioral response analytics. Wayne Enterprises had secured contracts to develop adaptive crowd control armor. Non-lethal, they said. Humanitarian. Bruce was 9 when he wandered into that room unnoticed. He saw schematics of reinforced polymer plating designed to disperse blunt force. He saw microfilament mesh that stiffened under electrical impulse. He saw the early blueprint of something that would one day wrap around his ribs. He did not understand what it meant. He understood only that his father's voice sounded different when discussing control. The alley came later. The mugger's hand did not shake. The gun did not misfire. The sound was small. The consequence was permanent. Bruce's memory did not freeze on the pearls. It froze on the smell-burnt powder and wet brick. It froze on the way his father's blood spread outward in quiet geometry. People say trauma creates purpose. Trauma creates repetition. He did not vow to save Gotham. He vowed to never be that small again. The mansion grew silent. Board members whispered about succession, about liability, about legacy preservation. Alfred moved through corridors like a medic in a mausoleum. Bruce did not cry where anyone could see. He trained, not at first with masters, at first with pain. He ran until his lungs tore at themselves. He struck heavy bags until knuckles split and healed crooked. He studied schematics from Wayne R&D Archives, impact-resistant composites, neural response stimulants, surveillance networks designed for urban pacification. When he left Gotham to train abroad, it was not to seek enlightenment. It was to acquire methods. He learned how to break a wrist without shattering his own thumb. He learned how to read breath patterns in darkness. He learned how to dislocate shoulders and reset them alone. He returned thinner, harder, less human in posture. The cave had always been there. Geological surveys commissioned decades earlier had mapped it for potential development. Reinforced access points, concealed power routing. Even the foundations of the manor had been engineered with structural anomalies, spaces that could be expanded without detection. Bruce descended into it like a surgeon entering a body he intended to alter. The fursuit was assembled from military prototypes never released publicly. Riot armor layered over reactive mesh, a cape threaded with microfilament rods capable of stiffening into a gliding surface when electrified. It was too heavy. The cowl constricted blood flow near the temples, triggering migraines that blurred vision mid-movement. The chest plate restricted respiration. He vomited inside it during the first field test. He went back out the next night. The first criminal he confronted laughed, until Bruce moved. He broke the man's collarbone. The scream echoed longer than the fight. Bruce returned to the cave shaking not from fear but from realization. Violence felt efficient. Efficient felt good. The myth began accidentally. A dock worker claimed a demon with horns had descended from a crane. A mugger swore a shadow swallowed his knife. Police chatter exaggerated what little they saw. Bruce did not correct the record. He fed it. Anonymous tips seeded online forums. Grainy security footage leaked. The symbol appeared black on yellow at first, before he decided even that was too honest. He removed the yellow, let the bat exist as absence, as whole. The more criminals feared him, the less often he had to strike. That was the theory. But fear compounds. Criminals escalated, armed heavier, organized tighter, adopted tactics learned from war zones, and Bruce adapted with them, stronger plating. Embedded taser systems in the gauntlets, chemical injectors for emergency adrenaline surges that shaved seconds off reaction time and years off cardiac stability. Each upgrade stole something. Sleep, circulation, patience. Alfred noticed first. "You are not healing properly," he said once, stitching a laceration near the shoulder seam. "I don't need to," Bruce replied. It was not bravado, it was belief. The night he faced his first real strategist, a mercenary imported from overseas who anticipated every movement, Bruce nearly died. The man did not panic at theatrics. He targeted joints, seams, respiratory vulnerabilities. Bruce survived by collapsing a stairwell and burying them both under debris. The mercenary did not rise. 3 tenants in adjacent apartments did not rise either. Bruce paid the settlements anonymously. The newspapers called it a gas line failure. He did not correct them. The line between protection and occupation blurred quietly. Surveillance expanded. Facial recognition systems integrated with city cameras under the guise of counterterrorism. Wayne Enterprises secured contracts to modernize Gotham's infrastructure. Every alley gained an eye. Every rooftop a sensor. Bruce told himself it was necessary. The criminals were evolving. He had to evolve faster. But systems of control do not stay contained. Data flowed through channels he did not fully own. International brokers noticed unusual procurement patterns, specialized armor composites, restricted ballistics research, encrypted communication spikes centered around Gotham's coordinates. The Continental noticed. They are not sentimental about symbols. They are attentive to disruptions. Batman did not kill indiscriminately, but he destabilized markets. Smuggling routes collapsed. Assassination contracts failed when targets were extracted preemptively. Syndicates lost revenue streams overnight. Equilibrium tilted. The hotel that does not officially exist prides itself on balance. Remove chaos. Preserve structure. Batman was not chaos, he was interference. Years passed before the contract was whispered, not because of one failure, because of accumulation. Each broken jaw shifted the calculus. Each intercepted shipment altered supply lines. Each vigilante intervention forced professionals to account for an unpredictable variable. And professionals dislike variables. On the night the contract was formally authorized, Bruce was in the cave recalibrating the cervical guard where a blade had once entered. He reinforced the seam with layered Kevlar composite and a thin titanium lattice. Increased weight by 1.3 kilograms. Reduced neck rotation by 12%. He accepted the loss. He had begun to accept many losses. He replayed rooftop footage of the man in black moving with lethal economy. John Wick, a name that circulated through encrypted forums with something approaching reverence. Not myth. Record. Wick did not posture. He did not monologue. He ended processes. Bruce studied his gait frame by frame. Micro adjustments in wrist angle before firing. The absence of wasted motion. He did not feel anger. He felt recognition. Another man who had buried softness under ritual. Another man shaped by loss into instrument. But instruments can be directed. Bruce believed he was still choosing. The Continental believed otherwise. In a private room lit by amber chandeliers, Winston regarded a dossier thicker than most obituaries. "Is he manageable?" an unseen voice asked. Winston considered. "No," he said. "Is he mortal?" Winston paused longer. "Yes." The contract remained open. Escalation authorized. John Wick accepted without ceremony. Not because he hated the bat, because procedure required completion. Back in Gotham, Bruce sealed the cowl and tested the new reinforcement. He did not consider surrender. He did not consider surrender. The alley still lived inside him, replaying endlessly. He believed he was preventing another one. He did not yet understand that in trying to end his own origin, he had seeded thousands more. Above the city, the signal ignited again. Citizens flinched. Criminals recalculated. And in the cave beneath stone and bone, Bruce whispered to no one, "I will not be hunted." The cave did not answer. It only echoed. And somewhere beyond Gotham's skyline, the contract's price ticked upward once more. Not because of hatred, because of inevitability. We used to measure time by seasons. Now we measure it by rebuilds. The Narrows has been reconstructed 4 times in 6 years. The paint is newer than the bones beneath it. Scaffolding has become a permanent architectural feature, like gargoyles or grief. When the bat signal ignites, conversations stop mid-sentence. Forks pause halfway to mouths. Teachers close blinds without explaining why. Children no longer ask what it means. They ask how long it will last. The official term is Vigilante Adjacent Impact Radius. Insurance companies use it to calculate risk premiums. If you live within 2 miles of known hero activity, you pay more to exist. My neighbor Marta calls it the shadow tax. Her husband died during a chase 3 winters ago, not shot, not stabbed, crushed when a stolen armored truck swerved to avoid the bat and mounted the sidewalk instead. The report called it collateral deviation. The bat apprehended the driver. The driver received life. Marta received condolences. We attend more funerals than festivals. Sirens have replaced church bells. Curfew begins not by law but by instinct. When the sky turns a particular bruised violet and the wind shifts off the river, people go indoors. Windows darken. Rooftops empty. Because rooftops are no longer places for air. They are arenas. The night after Kane Street collapsed, volunteers formed bucket lines in the rain, passing debris hand to hand. No capes, no armor, just hands. The bat did not appear. Rumor said he was injured. Rumor said he was hunting the man in black. Rumor said the man in black was hunting him. Rumor said the price on his head had doubled. We did not care which rumor was true. We cared about the bodies. 14 dead, 16 critical. A laundromat owner whose hands had folded shirts for 27 years now folded beneath concrete. The news replayed silhouettes falling through smoke. They never showed the child's sneaker recovered from the rubble. Gotham has learned to edit its pain. 3 nights later, the shooting started near Robinson Park. Not chaotic gunfire. Measured, disciplined, professionals. From my window, I saw men in tailored suits moving through the trees with suppressed carbines, clearing corners like they were in a war zone. They were not after drugs, not after territory. They were after a man in a cape. The bat struck from above, cape rigid as a wing mid-descent. 2 men dropped before they understood the angle of attack. A third fired into the canopy blindly. A stray round shattered the park's power relay. Darkness swallowed the playground. In the blackout, someone screamed. It wasn't one of them. It was a teenager who had been cutting through the park after a late shift. He ran the wrong direction. Crossfire does not care about innocence. By dawn, his face was on a poster taped to a lamppost, missing. We knew what that meant. The Continental does not rage. It audits. Informants began disappearing. A taxi driver who once transported the bleeding figure away from a scene was found in his cab, gold coin resting on each eyelid. A nurse who treated a man with unusual armor abrasions was discovered in her apartment stairwell, neck snapped cleanly. The message was not theatrical. It was arithmetic. If you subtract the network, you isolate the symbol. And isolation is lethal. The bat responded by expanding his own reach. Drones began appearing over neighborhoods at night, silent, bat-shaped silhouettes scanning rooftops. Police frequencies experienced interference. Street cameras blinked red, then black. Surveillance multiplied. Protection blurred into occupation. My son asked why the sky had eyes now. I told him it was to keep us safe. He did not look convinced. Markets adjusted. Criminals stopped carrying phones. Meetings moved underground. Every shadow became suspect. And somewhere among the whispers, a terrible thought began to circulate in grocery lines and subway platforms. What if the contract succeeds? Would the violence end? Or would it simply redistribute? The man in black moved differently from the others. He did not spray bullets into darkness. He studied. He mapped. He learned which rooftops the bat favored, which alleys offered fastest egress, which abandoned factories hid emergency caches. He cut off supply chains quietly. 3 Wayne Enterprises shipments of specialized composite materials vanished in transit. A remote server farm outside the city suffered a malfunction that erased months of encrypted data. The bat's response times slowed by seconds. Seconds cost blood. One evening, near the docks, the bat intercepted a weapons shipment bound for the Narrows. He disabled 6 traffickers in under a minute. But the container held more than rifles. Fuel, industrial solvents. When a stray shot ruptured a barrel, fire leapt eagerly. The pier burned. Warehouse 12 collapsed inward. 2 dock workers who had been hiding inside hoping to avoid both criminals and heroes did not escape. The bat stood amid smoke as fire crews arrived. He did not stay to explain. He never does. He vanishes. We are left with explanations. Politicians held press conferences condemning urban destabilization. They did not name him. They did not need to. Approval ratings dipped. Vigilante legislation resurfaced. Behind closed doors, discussions turned pragmatic. If the Continental removes him, perhaps equilibrium returns. No one asked us. We lived beneath the battles, not inside the boardrooms. The bat signal ignited again on a night when the air felt too thin. People did not gather to watch. They retreated. On a rooftop in old Gotham, 2 figures collided in rain that seemed determined to erase them both. This time, the fight did not stay contained. They crashed through a skylight into an abandoned office building slated for demolition. It should have been empty. It wasn't. A homeless encampment had taken shelter there, tarps strung between cubicles, small fires in metal bins. The bat did not know. Wick did not know. Violence does not check occupancy permits. Gunfire ricocheted off filing cabinets. The bait disarmed one attacker with brutal efficiency, but a deflected round struck a propane canister near a makeshift stove. The explosion did not level the building. It only ensured that those who survived would not hear properly again. By the time the 2 men disengaged, 5 civilians lay bleeding among office debris. One of them, a veteran who had lost his house after medical bills swallowed his savings, looked up at the bat through smoke and said something I will never forget. "You're not saving us. You're using us." The bat did not answer. He grappled upward through the broken ceiling and vanished into night. Wick watched him go. For a moment, only a moment, he looked down at the wounded. His jaw tightened. Then he left too. Because contracts do not pause for reflection. Ambulances arrived. Reporters followed. The headline the next morning read, "Vigilante where escalate." It did not list names of the displaced. It did not show the burned sleeping bags. It did not quote the veteran. Life under heroes is not cinematic. It is cumulative. We rebuild. We repaint. We retape missing posters over old ones. Children draw bats with fewer wings now, more like claws. My son asked me tonight if the man in black is worse than the bat. I told him I don't know. He asked which one is on our side. I could not answer that either. Because from where we stand beneath falling glass and collapsing roofs, there are no sides. There is only gravity, and it always seems to choose us. Above the skyline, lightning flickered. The signal did not ignite. For the first time in weeks, the sky remained empty. Silence spread across Gotham like a held breath. It was worse than sirens, because silence means preparation. Somewhere in the dark, the bat was adapting. Somewhere else, the man in black was calculating. And we ordinary, breakable, forgettable waited to learn which direction the next collapse would fall. Power does not operate in the open. It builds rooms without windows. The first meeting took place 3 floors beneath a federal courthouse no one trusted. No insignias, no flags, just men and women in tailored restraint, discussing a city as if it were a spreadsheet. Urban destabilization index has exceeded acceptable thresholds. Collateral impact trending upward. International contract activity confirmed within municipal limits. They did not say Batman's name. They did not say John Wick's either. They referred to them as assets and external variables. A screen displayed satellite heat signatures over Gotham clusters of violent flare-ups like infected tissue. One senator leaned forward. "Can we leverage the hotel?" A pause. The hotel did not officially exist, which meant it was already being leveraged. In a penthouse suite that overlooked a river too polluted to reflect honestly, Winston regarded a decanter of amber liquid and listened to a secure line crackle with coded formality. "You've allowed the situation to metastasize," the voice said. Winston smiled faintly. "Metastasis implies surprise. This is progression." The city cannot sustain prolonged engagement. The city is not the objective. A beat. The objective is equilibrium. Equilibrium, a word that tastes clean until you examine what must be removed to achieve it. The Continental had never intended spectacle. The contract was procedural. A correction to market distortion. Batman had altered supply chains, collapsed syndicates, interfered with arbitration protocols. Criminal economies thrive on predictability. Even murder has rules. He broke rules without subscribing to alternatives, and so the hotel responded, not with chaos, with structure. A secondary bounty activated, time-limited, geographically constrained, incentives tiered by proximity to the Bat's operational network, assistants, suppliers, medical intermediaries, digital facilitators. The message was simple. Isolation precedes elimination. In Gotham, the effects rippled outward. A warehouse foreman who once approved a late-night delivery without inspecting its contents was found in the trunk of his own car. A freelance coder who had patched municipal camera feeds during a blackout vanished after logging into a server farm registered under a shell company tied to Wayne Enterprises. No torture, no theatrics, just subtraction. Batman felt it before he confirmed it. Alfred's medical supplier stopped answering calls. A contact in a docks transmitted a single encrypted phrase, "They're counting," before his signal went dark permanently. Bruce stood in the cave before a wall of screens. Surveillance grids mapped in cold blue light. Patterns where there used to be noise. The network was shrinking. He had built Gotham into an organism that fed him information. Now something was cauterizing the veins. Lucius Fox arrived that evening without ceremony. He did not descend into the cave often. When he did, it meant the line between corporate and clandestine had blurred beyond pretense. "We've detected irregular procurement interference," Lucius said, eyes scanning the armored chassis suspended in the center of the cavern. "Shipments rerouted, vendors pressured. Someone is targeting the infrastructure." Bruce did not look at him. "I know." Lucius hesitated. "This isn't a street war, it's systemic." Bruce finally turned. "So am I." That was the problem. Systems colliding do not produce heroism, they produce collapse. The suit had grown heavier since Kane Street. Reinforced cervical guard, additional rib plating, micro-servo augmentation along the shoulders to compensate for weight gain. Lucius studied it with quiet concern. "You're sacrificing mobility. I'm sacrificing vulnerability. Those aren't synonyms." Bruce did not respond. On the streets, the narrative shifted. News outlets debated regulated vigilantism. Think pieces questioned whether a city could ethically rely on an unaccountable guardian. Poll numbers fluctuated with each new casualty. Governments floated proposals for hero registration protocols, tracking implants disguised as voluntary safety measures. Subsidized compliance in exchange for legal amnesty. Protection framed as partnership. Partnership framed as necessity. Behind closed doors, intelligence agencies shared data with the Continental's less visible representatives. Not directly, never directly, but information travels in polite circles. Locations of known Wayne Enterprises R&D facilities. Satellite blind spots, infrastructure schematics. If Batman could not be reasoned with, perhaps he could be cornered. In the hotel that officially did not exist, a new protocol was prepared. Excommunicado, reserved for those who disrupt order beyond tolerance. Applied rarely. Enforced absolutely. Winston considered the word like a man tasting poison to ensure potency. If declared, it would not merely sanction Wick's contract, it would open the city. Every affiliated operative within reach of Gotham's skyline would be authorized. The problem with escalation is not intensity, it is multiplication. John Wick sat alone in a dim room, dismantling and cleaning a pistol with mechanical patience. His movements were not angry, not hurried, precise. A dossier lay open beside him, maps of Gotham's subterranean architecture, transit tunnels, decommissioned utility shafts, geological surveys that predated the manor on the hill. He traced one line with a fingertip. The cave was not myth, it was engineering. He did not need to believe in the Bat, he needed to locate him. A handler entered quietly. "They're considering excommunicado," the handler said. Wick did not look up. "They won't. They might." He reassembled the pistol. "They don't want chaos." "No," the handler agreed. "They want conclusion. Conclusion requires compression. In Gotham, compression feels like pressure in the skull before a migraine. Police presence increased not to arrest assassins but to contain civilian movement. Curfews extended. Checkpoints erected in neighborhoods statistically proximate to vigilante activity. "We're doing this for your safety," officers said. Safety became a perimeter. Marta, my neighbor, was stopped 3 times in 1 week walking home from her second job. "Random compliance check," they told her. Her husband's framed photograph rattled on the wall each time helicopters passed overhead. My son asked why soldiers were on the bridge now. I told him it was temporary. He has begun to recognize that word as a lie. The Bat adapted. He abandoned familiar rooftops, reduced digital footprint, shifted to analog communication where possible, hand-delivered encrypted drives instead of transmitting data. He became less visible, which made the city more nervous. Absence can be louder than presence. Then, one night, 3 men in suits approached Commissioner Gordon's townhouse, not through the front door, to the power grid. The lights failed at 1003 a.m. Backup generators engaged. Sniper glass across the street shimmered briefly. A single suppressed shot cracked through a window. Gordon survived because the Bat was already inside. He had anticipated the move. The counterattack was swift. 2 operatives down before they could reposition. The third retreated, bleeding but mobile. The street absorbed more bullets than truth. By morning, the official statement described an attempted targeted assault on municipal leadership by unidentified criminal elements. No mention of contracts. No mention of hotels. Just instability. Winston received confirmation of the failed strike without visible irritation. He lifted the decanter again. "Prepare the notice," he said. The word traveled outward through encrypted channels like a contagion. Excommunicado. Gotham. Effective at dawn, which meant every affiliated killer within radius would be sanctioned to participate, not out of malice, out of structure. When the Bat learned of it, he stood alone in the cave, surrounded by screens that no longer showed reliable patterns. He understood multiplication. He understood siege. He had built himself into a symbol meant to deter criminals. Now, he had become incentive. He removed the emblem from his chest plate. Left only matte black. Symbols attract aim. Alfred watched silently. "You cannot fight an institution with fists," Alfred said quietly. Bruce sealed the cowl. "Then I will break its hands." Above Gotham, the sky felt heavier than usual. Not storm heavy, intent heavy. The city did not know the word excommunicado, but it felt the shift. Shops closed earlier. Subway cars ran half empty. Rumors traveled faster than trains. My son asked if the Bat would leave. I looked at the dark skyline and tried to imagine it without him. It did not look safer. It looked vacant. Vacancy invites occupation. At 5:59 a.m., as the first gray light bled into the horizon, encrypted devices across the city vibrated simultaneously. Authorization confirmed. All privileges suspended. Open contract recognized. Gotham was no longer a battleground between 2 men. It was an arena. And when arenas open, spectators do not stay spectators for long. Somewhere beneath stone and circuitry, Bruce Wayne tightened his gauntlets. Somewhere in a room with no windows, John Wick loaded a fresh magazine. The third confrontation happened on a night that promised nothing but rain. Gotham smelled of wet concrete and burnt fuel. Steam rose from sewer grates like ghosts, winding through alleys already littered with casualties from previous clashes. Streetlights flickered, unable to pierce the gloom. We residents, too poor or stubborn to leave, huddled in doorways and basements, counting the intervals between distant gunshots, trying to discern which were heroes and which were executioners. They are indistinguishable now. From the rooftop above Robinson Park, the Bat observed the streets with hawk precision. His cape, thickened and reinforced after Kane Street, flared slightly in the wind. It no longer resembled a symbol. It resembled a coffin lid. Each step he took was calculated. Each strike, surgical. Each target chosen not for morality but for opportunity. Below him, John Wick moved like a shadow that had learned anatomy. He fired with deliberate economy. The first shot incapacitated a rooftop lookout. The second struck a surveillance drone mid-flight. The third forced the Bat to pivot, throwing off his trajectory. Their battle descended to the streets. Concrete groaned under armored boots. Vehicles became shields. Alleyways became slaughterhouses. A stray EMP pulse from the Bat's suit blacked out 3 city blocks. Life support systems in a nearby hospital faltered. Neon signs sputtered and died. Inside the neonatal wing, alarms screeched, oxygen tanks hissed. Staff scrambled trying to maintain life while two men above or nearby treated the city as a game board. By the time the smoke cleared, 14 infants were dead. No camera caught their faces. No headline mentioned them. Only the silhouettes of two figures falling through fire and rain were broadcast repeatedly for ratings, for fear, for legend. The city began to change beneath them. Criminals stopped fearing the Bat. They began fearing John Wick. The man in black did not distinguish between vigilante and civilian network. Anyone aiding the Bat became collateral, a variable to remove. Dock workers, couriers, even street-level informants vanished without trace. Gold coins appeared over closed eyelids. The Bat responded not by surrendering, but by escalating. He reinforced his armor, added counter-ballistics plating, micro-servo assistance for shoulder joints. Each augmentation cost him mobility, breath, and the little humanity left in his body. He no longer glided across rooftops. He marched, heavy, inevitable, unavoidable. The city suffered for it. Warehouses collapsed. Streets were severed by overturned vehicles. Subway tunnels flooded when containment barriers ruptured during combat. Civilians caught between them were not casualties, they were byproducts, footnotes, arithmetic. Each clash rippled outward. By dawn, the Narrows counted missing. The homeless, who once thought rooftops safe, were discovered crushed beneath fire escapes. Grocery lines shortened because markets feared targeted sabotage. Schools announced emergency lockdowns after stray gunfire ricocheted into hallways. The narrative shifted. The Bat was no longer savior. He was a force, a curse, a metric for disaster. John Wick was no longer hunter. He was law, absolute, procedure. I watched from a window as paramedics lifted bodies from puddles of water, glass, and concrete dust. My son asked if heroes were supposed to hurt people like this. I had no answer. Because they are not heroes anymore. Not in the ways we imagined. They are instruments. Instruments of escalation. Above them, the signal lit not as warning but as lure. The fight was moving below ground next. The Bat disappeared into maintenance tunnels reinforced for battle. Wick traced him with surgical precision, cutting off exits, collapsing passages to force confrontation. Civilians began leaving the city quietly, selling apartments at ruinous losses, avoiding rooftops, avoiding streets. Some stayed because they had no choice. The city's pulse slowed. Fear became a rhythm. Death became a pattern. And still, the two men fought. Each collision produced more ruin. Each victory yielded more loss. Each strike forced the city to account for collateral in real time. By the end of the night, Gotham had changed, not because anyone chose to save it, but because its guardians were locked in mutual annihilation. And somewhere beyond the horizon, in a hotel that officially does not exist, Winston marked a ledger. The contract's price doubled, because a city cannot be left in balance when its myths wage war, and a myth cannot fight a contract without consequences. Gotham would survive. People would not. The Bot no longer resembled a man. The first suits had been armor. The latest was something else entirely, an exoskeleton stitched with wire, composite plating, and micro-servo actuators, each joint a labyrinth of metal, leather, and synthetic tendon. Each movement exacting a cost. His knees screamed with each landing. His shoulders burned with every swing, blood pooled in microfractures beneath the plates. Pain was encoded into every fiber. He tested a grapple line. It whined under tension, resisting gravity and fatigue alike. He pushed it too far. A tendon in his forearm snapped. He ignored it. A hero does not stop to treat himself. The cowl had been modified repeatedly. Layers of polymer mesh pressed against skull, constricting carotids just enough to sharpen reflexes while inducing migraines that blurred vision. Infrared optics lined the interior. HUD overlays glowed faintly in deep black, marking every surface, every enemy, every civilian with precision. It was not protection. It was a trap for the body itself. His gauntlets held hidden blades, taser nodes, retractable carbon fiber spikes. His boots incorporated impact and spring loading for explosive leaping. Each modification demanded months of recalibration. If one microservo misfired, an arm would lock mid-strike. He could fall from a rooftop without injury, but only because he accepted joint degradation in advance. Above ground, John Wick's uniform was less showy, but no less lethal. His tailored overcoat concealed ballistic plates and reinforced shoulder padding. Each pocket contained ammunition, knives, and tools for sabotage or extraction. Every step was premeditated. every shot precise. Wick's body had become a machine, a history of pain and discipline carved into bone and tendon. Symbols: the bat, the gun, the cape had lost their meaning. The bat's cape had once been wings, a mythic signal of terror. Now it was heavy, stiffened with rods to survive combat, to slice through obstacles, to protect the back from falling debris. Its flaps tore easily against concrete edges, leaving shredded pieces in his wake. Capes no longer inspired awe, they were shrouds. The emblem on his chest, once a bright insignia meant to rally fear into justice, had faded to matte black. Visibility increased risk. Absence became symbol enough. People whispered, "If you see the bat, you may already be too late." Wick's symbol was silence, an absence of warning, a body in the wrong place at the wrong time. Precision executed without theatrics. Legends do not announce themselves, they arrive. The civilians who lived beneath them felt the transformation daily. Windows were reinforced with plywood and mesh. Kids walked alleyways with heads low, tracing patterns of bullets and broken glass instead of murals. Elderly residents learned which streets offered cover, which intersections had surveillance, which corners had become arenas. Every use of power carried cost. For the bat, the cost was physical and mental. Each armor upgrade brought faster reflexes, but slower healing. Each chemical stimulator kept him moving while burning heart tissue. Each mission etched fractures into bones and memory alike. He could never rest. Rest meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant death or worse, failure to prevent it. For Wick, the cost was isolation. Each kill, each contract executed, cut him from human contact. Each act of precision detached him further from compassion. He did not mourn the collateral. He calculated it. He could not afford guilt. It would have slowed him down. The city too bore cost. Rooftops shredded, alleys crumpled, walls stained with smoke and blood. Symbols once meant to inspire hope now marked zones of danger. The bat's shadow was no longer protective. It was a prelude. The man in black silence was not neutral. It was judgment. We, ordinary people living beneath the fallout, began to recognize that symbols are hollow. Armor does not shield us. Weapons do not fight for us. Power is not protection. It is pain given form, and in the night between explosions and gunfire, the bat's silhouette swept across the city. The cape tore against brick. Sparks flew from grapnel anchors. Blood seeped from seams in armor that were never meant to endure endlessly. And somewhere nearby, Wick moved with clinical grace, each motion designed to end conflict swiftly, but the cost spilled into the streets, into homes, into alleys filled with innocents. Symbols were dead. Suits were instruments. Powers were weapons self-inflicted and uncontained. The city's children drew bats not in triumph, but in warning. And every night, as civilians whispered of the shapes moving above them, we understood the truth. Heroes were never saviors. They were machines of consequence, and every choice they made left scars on flesh and stone alike. Betrayal does not begin with treachery. It begins with fatigue. By the 7th week of open contract status, Gotham had stopped pretending this was a duel. It was a siege, not of buildings but of nerves. The first fracture appeared inside the department. Commissioner Gordon stood before a room of officers who no longer believed in the thin blue line so much as the thick black shadow behind it. "We cannot coordinate with him anymore," one captain said. "Every time the signal lights, we paint a target on the precinct." Another spoke more bluntly. "He's drawing them here." Gordon did not argue. He had seen the rooftop footage. He had watched Wick move with surgical certainty, dismantling response teams without spectacle. These were not thugs. They were professionals who did not care about jurisdiction. "We don't light it," the captain continued. "We reduce exposure. We let the contract resolve itself." Resolve. As if two men could fight without the city absorbing the recoil. Gordon looked at the switch mounted behind reinforced glass. The bat signal had once meant partnership. Now it meant invitation. That night it remained dark. In the cave, Bruce noticed immediately. He replayed traffic feeds. No flare in the clouds, no call to arms. Isolation complete. He had expected it. He had expected it. He had not expected the hollow it created. Alfred stood at a distance. "They are protecting themselves," Alfred said. "They're abandoning the field." "No, sir," Alfred replied quietly. "They are stepping out of your crossfire." Bruce did not answer. He reviewed a list of compromised contacts. Dock foreman deceased. ER surgeon missing. IT contractor confirmed neutralized. The network had collapsed not through fear of him, but fear of the hotel. He had forced a binary choice on everyone who ever aided him: stand with the symbol, or survive a system. Most chose survival. He could not fault them. That did not make the solitude lighter. Across the river, in a shuttered textile mill converted into a temporary safe house, 3 independent vigilantes argued under flickering fluorescent lights. They'd once admired the bat from a distance. Urban legends inspired lesser masks. A former MMA fighter calling himself Strite. A tech-savvy college dropout operating as Wire. A paramedic who patched up street-level victims under the alias Mercy. They had believed in force, applied carefully. Now they were being hunted by men who treated aliases as coordinates. "We disband," Wire said, hands trembling over a cracked tablet. "We go to ground. Delete everything." Strike shook his head. "If we disappear, the hotel wins." "The hotel already wins," Mercy whispered. "They're not fighting crime, they're fighting disruption." Strike slammed his fist into a concrete pillar. "He's still out there." Mercy's eyes hardened. "And how many more of us die because of that?" Before the argument could settle, glass shattered. 3 suppressed shots. Strike fell first, throat open by a round that had traveled half a block through night air. Wire reached for a sidearm that jammed in shaking fingers. Mercy dragged a medical bag toward the wounded out of reflex, not strategy. John Wick entered through the broken window with measured calm. He did not enjoy the work. He did not hesitate. 2 more shots. Silence returned. He surveyed the room, not triumphantly, not cruelly, just confirming outcome. The bat's peripheral orbit had been cleared another degree. By morning, social media threads speculated about a masked gang shootout. Comment sections filled with opinion. No one mentioned the word vigilante. It had become unfashionable. In the Narrows, Marta made her choice. A week earlier, the bat had used her rooftop to access a neighboring building. She had said nothing. Fear of criminals outweighed fear of capes. Now, 2 men in suits waited in her kitchen when she returned from work. They did not threaten her son. They did not need to. "We know he uses this block," one said, placing a gold coin on the table. "We also know you prefer your child breathing." They left without raising their voices. That night, when she heard the faint scrape of boots above her ceiling, she made a call to a number written on a card she had pretended to throw away. She gave them a time window. Nothing more. Betrayal tastes metallic. She did not sleep. On the adjacent rooftop, the bat paused. He felt it before he saw it. The stillness was wrong. No ambient criminal chatter. No nervous movement, just absence. Then muzzle flashes erupted from 3 angles. He moved, but slower than before. The heavier armor cost him fractions of seconds. A round punched through a weakened seam near the shoulder. Another shattered a grapple launcher mid-deploy. He dropped 2 shooters before they could reposition. A third retreated without panic. Professional. He recognized the pattern. Wick. The exchange was brief and brutal. Close quarters between water towers and satellite dishes. The bat struck harder than usual, not to disable but to end. Wick absorbed the blows with controlled retreat, redirecting force, firing into joints, targeting servos. A final shot glanced off the reinforced cowl, leaving Bruce's vision momentarily doubled. In that blur, Wick disengaged. He did not chase. He did not taunt. He left. On the street below, Marta watched through curtains she did not realize she was crushing in her fists. When she heard the thud of a body hitting asphalt, she nearly screamed. It was not the bat. It was one of the suited men, discarded. The bat vanished before police arrived. Marta found the gold coin still on her table. She did not know whether her call had saved her son or sentenced someone else's. Gordon received a report of rooftop gunfire and did not activate the signal. He poured himself a drink instead. In the cave, Bruce removed the damaged shoulder plate. Blood pooled beneath it, thick and dark. Alfred stitched in silence. "They are closing around you," Alfred said. Bruce stared at a city map marked in red. "Then I closed faster, but fractures had already formed beyond flesh. Wayne Enterprises board members convened an emergency session. Shareholders are nervous," one said. "Your philanthropic visibility has dropped. Your proximity to these incidents is statistically significant." Bruce attended the meeting in person. Bruised, composed, distant. "If you believe divesting from Gotham will stabilize markets," he said evenly, "try." It was not a threat. It was indifference. Indifference frightened them more. Outside the building, protesters gathered not against crime, but against vigilantism. No more masks, their signs read. Let the contract finish. Hope had inverted. For the first time since the Bat appeared years ago, a segment of the population did not want him to win. They wanted conclusion. Even if conclusion meant his corpse. That night, the Bat stood atop Wayne Tower and looked down at the crowd chanting for his absence. He did not feel anger. He felt clarity. Symbols fracture when people stop needing them. Across the river, Wick received updated coordinates and casualty reports. The contract's price had plateaued. The hotel was satisfied with momentum. He cleaned his weapon with steady hands. This was no longer about bounty. It was about closure. Two men forged by trauma, narrowing each other's world until only one outline remained. Beneath them, civilians recalculated loyalty in whispers. Police distanced. Vigilantes died. Neighbors made phone calls they would never confess to. The city did not split cleanly. It eroded. And erosion is quieter than betrayal. On the roof of Marta's building, a small object lay unnoticed in a drainage gutter, a tracking device lodged during the skirmish. It blinked once in the dark, somewhere far from Gotham, a screen illuminated with new data. The cave was no longer myth. It was a coordinate. And the next fracture would not be rooftop deep. It would be foundational. The wind over the Doomslayer did not howl. It screamed. Europa's horizon was a wasteland, the fractured ice and shattered UAC fortifications, long abandoned after the first demonic incursions. Frozen corpses were entombed beneath translucent layers of crystal frost soldiers who never made it to the dropships. The sky above was a bruised violet, Jupiter looming like a silent god, and beneath the ice, something was waking. The signal inside a derelict UAC relay tower, the Slayer stood before a flickering holographic display. The signal had been looping for 17 hours, a woman's voice. Broken. Glitched. Not demonic, it's rewriting them. We found something under the crust. It's not hell, it's older. The transmission dissolved into static. The Slayer didn't hesitate. He crushed the console. Then he walked toward the storm. The descent. The ice cracked under the first impact. A seismic charge, one of the last experimental UAC mining tools, detonated beneath the glacier, opening a wound in the moon's surface. The fissure widened into a jagged abyss descending into darkness. The Slayer dropped in. Freefall. Frost vapor spiraled upward as gravity shifted. Europa's subsurface ocean shimmered far below, glowing faintly blue through kilometers of fractured ice. Halfway down, something moved in the walls. Not demons, not flesh. The ice itself pulsed, veins of black tendrils spread like a nervous system, crawling through frozen layers branching outward. The Slayer fired the super shotgun. The blast shattered the ice wall and something screamed inside it. The ocean. He hit water like a meteor. The Predator suit sealed instantly. Internal thrusters engaged. Thermal regulators surged to counter the crushing cold. Below him, the ocean stretched endlessly. Above him, the ice sealed shut. He was alone. Then the water began to glow. Shapes moved in the abyss, fast, geometric silhouettes that were too symmetrical to be natural, and too fluid to be machines. A whisper filled his helmet speakers, not through radio, through bone. You survived hell. You survived the Khan Maycrap. You survived Devoth. But you have not survived us. The Slayer ignited his shoulder-mounted flares. The light revealed it. A structure, impossible in scale. An ancient cathedral carved into the underside of Europa's ice shell, its architecture alien beyond demonic design. Smooth angles, shifting surfaces, living stone, and at its center, a heart. Not biological, not mechanical, something in between. It pulsed once, and the ocean shifted, the first host. The corpses on the seafloor rose. UAC divers, scientists, security, but they were not necromorphs. Their bodies had been reorganized, limbs fused into spirals, faces stretched into fractal patterns. Bones protruded in geometric lattices. Their eyes glowed with the same blue as the structure above. One of them spoke with 3 mouths at once. Your war is primitive. They rushed him. The Slayer moved. Underwater combat was brutal, slower but heavier. The chain gun spun, rounds tearing through distorted flesh, but the bodies didn't collapse normally. They dissolved into shimmering particulate matter that reassembled seconds later. Adaptive. Learning. The Slayer switched tactics. He activated the crucible. The red blade ignited, boiling the ocean around it. He cut the first one in half, and the pieces did not regenerate. The ocean trembled. The heart pulsed again. The revelation. The cathedral walls shifted, opening like an iris. A figure emerged, not massive like a titan, not grotesque like a baron. It was slender, humanoid, perfectly symmetrical. Its surface shimmered like polished obsidian glass, lines of blue light tracing across its form like neural pathways. It had no face, but it looked at him. We are the architects. The ocean stilled. Hell is a parasite. We are the ecosystem. The Slayer stepped forward. The figure continued. We seeded worlds long before your species crawled from dust. We built the lattice beneath reality. Your gods were errors. Your demons were mutations. It raised a hand. The ocean compressed. Gravity folded sideways. The Slayer was thrown into the cathedral wall, stone cracking behind him. You are an anomaly. The Slayer stood. Blood drifted from a fracture in his armor. He revved the chainsaw. War beneath creation. The fight shattered physics. The architect bent space, folding water into blades of pressure that sliced through ice pillars. The Slayer countered with raw force rockets detonating in the abyss, the ballista firing bolts that distorted light itself. Every strike of the crucible destabilized the cathedral's geometry. The architect adapted with each exchange. Its movements became sharper, faster. It learned from him. It mirrored him. When the Slayer lunged, it dodged exactly as he would have. When he feinted, it countered before the motion completed. It wasn't just fighting him, it was simulating him. The core truths during a brief lock crucible blade against an energy construct the architect whispered directly into his mind. You are not the destroyer of gods. Images flooded his vision. The makers. The Dark Lord. Hell's origin. All of it traced backward, not to chaos, but to design. You were engineered to purge infection. The Slayer roared and drove the blade forward. The architect's form fractured, light spilling into the ocean like dying stars. But as it dissolved, it smiled, without a face. Now we test the cure. The cathedral collapsed. The heart exploded in silent light. The ocean surged upward. The aftermath. The Slayer ructed from the ice crust in a geyser of steam and shattered crystal. He landed on the frozen surface as the storm intensified. Behind him, cracks spread across Europa's ice sheet in perfect geometric patterns, not random fractures. Symbols. The sky above Jupiter shimmered. Something massive shifted in orbit. The Slayer looked up. For the first time, he was not hunting hell. He was hunting the origin of creation itself, and something far older than demons had just noticed him. To be continued.